morning. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Maestro Dive Master 2. This watch is available on AliExpress from ATNO official store for €30. Now firstly I want to point out this isn't the watch that I ordered from ATNO official store. I ordered the ATNO AT6002G. An ATNO official store sent me a different watch. This is branded as the Maestro Dive Master 2. So it's the same specification as the ATNO AT6002G but branded as a different watch brand. So that is a surprise. Now that wasn't the only surprise. Look closely at the bracelet. As you can see, the glide lock clasp is upside down on the bracelet. The flip lock should be at the top rather than the bottom. And the reason for that is they have made a glaring error. They have laser engraved M and Maestro on the glide lock clasp upside down. And rather than removing the laser engraving and doing it again the right way up, they simply decided to rotate the bracelet and clasp through 180 degrees, and they have fitted it to the head of the piece upside down. So one either has the option of wearing the piece with an upside down glide lock clasp, or alternatively one can have the glide lock clasp the correct way up with an upside down Maestro laser engraving. Now it's wholly unacceptable regardless of the price point of a piece. Yes, it's a low tier piece, it's only €30, but to send the customer a different branded watch to the watch that's advertised is wholly unacceptable. They have compounded that mistake by then sending the watch out on an upside down bracelet with upside down laser engraving on the glide lock clasp. Now, I've decided to review the piece nonetheless. So firstly, let's look at the packaging that the Maestro Dive Master 2 comes in. The watch comes in this resealable plastic bag, and the watch itself is fully wrapped with protective films, which one removes. And that plastic bag is protected again by a secondary bubble wrap sleeve. This is the watch box. It's an unbranded black cardboard watch box. One removes the lid, and inside the watch itself sits on this piece of foam to keep the bracelet stretched, and the watch itself sits inside this foam cutout panel. So it is basic, but it does suffice in protecting the watch and shipping from any damage. So with regards to the specification of this Maestro Dive Master 2, which is meant to be an ATNO AT6002G, it's clearly an homage to the Rolex Submariner date, and that is the 116610LN, which I own myself. So it has a 40mm diameter case, which copies the dimensions of the Submariner date super case, 48mm lug to lug measurement, 13mm thickness, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the upside down glide lock clasp. Now with regards to the materials used, solid stainless steel bezel, solid stainless steel case, screw down solid stainless steel case back, and the bracelet is also made from 316L grade stainless steel. The quality of the finishing to the oyster style bracelet is poor. This is a brand new watch, and if you look at the end link, if I tilt it in the lights, you can see there's a flaw in the finishing to the brushed satin finish on the end link. There is also a flaw on this side of the upside down glide lock and another flaw on this side of the glide lock. And throughout the bracelet one can see these kind of imperfections, these kind of flaws to the finishing. Brushed satin finish to the top side and underside as one would expect, mirror polish flanks to the bracelet, and it uses screw pins rather than push pins, which is good. Now with regards to the specification, the ceramic bezel insert is finished to a good standard, and it uses a hardlex crystal rather than sapphire. Now one has to accept at €30 one isn't going to get a sapphire crystal in a low tier piece. I think hardlex is a good compromise between mineral crystal, which is less expensive, and sapphire crystal, which is more expensive. Hardlex is effectively mineral crystal which has been coated to make it more scratch resistant. It's not as hard and scratch resistant as sapphire, but it is a good compromise. Now the negative of this hardlex crystal is there is no AR coating on the underside, and if I tilt the piece at an oblique angle in the light, you can see there is a lot of glare, a lot of reflection of the light because of the lack of anti-reflective coating, so that's a negative. The light bounces around the brushed satin rehort underneath the crystal and also the applied indices and the Mercedes hands. So it is difficult to read in direct light, as you can see, because of that glare. With regards to the Cyclops magnifier, it's another cost-cutting measure. It only has 1.5 times magnification rather than 2.5 times like a Rolex. And I really think the performance is negligible. Rather than using a 1.5 times Cyclops magnifier, they would have been better simply to omit the Cyclops and not use one at all. Just have a flat sapphire crystal, because it would be more aesthetically pleasing. Having 1.5 times magnification really doesn't enhance the legibility of the date complication. So the dial is a direct copy of the Submariner Date Maxi dial, has the same dial layout, but to add interest to the dial they have printed Dive Master 2 in blue text, which does add interest. It is aesthetically pleasing. Same Mercedes hands as the Submariner Date, and if you like the look of a Submariner Date, then it will appeal to you as being aesthetically pleasing. Now, with regards to the bezel action, it is poor. It has 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect, but the bezel action is very rough. It's inconsistent. The 120 clicks do not feel the same all the way round the 360 degrees as one rotates it. The bezel goes from being tight to loose again multiple times throughout those 120 clicks, and it feels rough. It doesn't feel smooth. There is half a click of backplay, as you can see, and that is all the way around the bezel regardless of its position, and there is also lateral side-to-side play in the bezel. So the bezel action is poorly executed. But however, on a positive note, the alignment is okay. When one rotates the bezel up to the 12 o'clock index, the triangle and loom pip on the bezel inset do align correctly with the 12 o'clock triangle index on the dial. So the alignment is good despite the lateral side-to-side play and the half a click of back play on the bezel. Now, with regards to the crown execution, solid stainless steel screw down crown made from 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finish, domed cap which is polished to a mirror finish. It's unsigned. There is a flaw, as you can see. The mirror polishing has a defect in it, which is very disappointing because it's easy to get mirror polishing flawless. And these are the kind of quality control issues that one cannot accept regardless of the €30 price point in the low tier. It just is wholly unacceptable to send out a brand new watch with these kind of flaws in a crown. With regards to the crown's execution, it is silky smooth when one unscrews it and screws it back down on the crown tube. The interface, the meshing of the threads is good. When one pulls it out to the first click, it's got a good positive click, and therefore one can set the date complication with a quick set function, which is good. It's very hard to get it out to the second click, the final click on the crown, to set the time to move the hands around the dial. Sometimes it takes 2 or even 3 times trying to pull it out and pull it out again to get it to actually click the second time, and it's very frustrating. Usually with a watch, one can pull out to the first positive click to set the date complication, and then pull out to the second click with a good positive click to hack the movement. So the movement does have hand winding and hacking, but it is a struggle to get the movement to hack and stop the second hand dead to rotate the hands and set the time. So disappointment, poor crown action. Now with regards to the bracelets, poorly finished, lot of play between the pins and the links. The end links are solid, which is good, but they are a poor fit. The profile of the end links doesn't match the profile of the case. There's also some play around the spring bars and also some slack. There's a gap between the 20mm lug width and also the solid end link. The end link moves around within the case on both sides, so poorly executed. And I really dislike the rattle of the bracelet. It feels like a Rolex Submariner Date Oyster bracelet, which is 20 years old and has bracelet stretch. It has that kind of feeling. There are large gaps in between the centre links and a lot of play and rattle because the pins are a loose fit through the links. And the cumulative effect of all that play and extra articulation is when wearing the watch on the wrist, it does rattle, and that is annoying. With regards to the execution of the upside down glide lock clasp, razor sharp edges on both ends which are actually dangerous. They could cut the wrists open. The 4 corners are sharp points, which again is dangerous. They could tear the skin. So wholly unacceptable to have a bracelet which, yes, it does look aesthetically pleasing because of the brass satin finish, but the razor sharp edges are very dangerous. The flip block execution is acceptable. It does open and close. The fit is good flush to the body of the case. Mirror polishing to the interior is done to an acceptable standard. And one thing I like about it, which is unusual on a low tier piece, is the inclusion of a glide lock mechanism. Now, even on more expensive low tier pieces like the Pagani Design PD1661, it doesn't have a glide lock mechanism in the clasp, and this is a notable feature of this piece, and I think that ATNO, the manufacturers of this Maestro, deserve credit for it, because really to get a glide lock clasp on a €30 piece is just very unusual. With regards to the finishing of the interior of the glide lock, it's actually not far off a Rolex Submariner date glide lock clasp, and that's a surprise. And it does work. One can click it in and out of the glide lock mechanism satisfactorily. So, although basic in terms of the finishing, it does suffice and it does work. And I would like to see glide lock clasp used on the Pagani designed PD1661 and other low tier price point pieces which are more expensive. They are €70 for example, and they don't have a glide lock. So I like it. It's just a shame that they haven't improved the quality control. As you can see, there's defects when one looks at the ends of the bracelet. There are lots of marks on the brush satin finish. So nice that it has a glide lock, but it's just a shame that the finishing on the bracelet itself is poor and the edges of that clasp on the exterior are razor sharp and dangerous. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, I've simply adjusted it using the glide lock. It does feel strange because the glide lock is upside down. But when on wrist, it is an incredibly comfortable piece to wear. It feels exactly the same as my Rolex Submariner date 116610LN. Same 40mm profile to the super case, same proportions, 20mm lug width, 48mm lug to lug, which is sublime. So incredibly comfortable piece to wear. Now the interesting thing to note is the heft. It weighs 152 grams. And that is actually very close to the weight of my Rolex Submariner date, which weighs 159 grams of heft. This is only 7 grams lighter than a Rolex Submariner date with a super case, so it does have a nice feeling of wrist presence and heft to it, even though it's a 40mm. And I like that. I like the fact that it does have that 152 grams of heft. Now, with regards to the rest of the specification, it's stated as having 50 metres of water resistance, and I think that's actually very conservative, but I think that ATNO, the manufacturers of the Maestro, deserve credit for not making any false claims. It does state 50 metres on the dial, and that's fair enough. They're not declaring that it's 200 metres when they haven't tested it to 200 metres. I'm confident that with a screw-down solid stainless steel crown and also a solid screw-down case back, it could withstand 100 or 200 metres of hermetic seal rather than 50 metres as stated. I think it's conservative. So I think it's fair enough. They've said it's a 50 metre water resistant piece, but I'm confident it would sustain 100 or 200 metres of hermetic seal. Now, we'll do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to its absolute maximum performance. Now, bearing in mind that this is a low tier piece, I haven't got high expectations, but I use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to its absolute peak nonetheless, and we'll see how it performs. Right, so that's immediately disappointing. As you can see, the Mercedes hands are loomed with green loom, which looks like C3 Luminova. On the applied indices and the loom pip on the ceramic bezel insert, they've used a blue tone of Luminova, so there's a mismatch. And I think regardless of the price point of a piece, it is wholly unacceptable for a watch brand to be using different coloured loom on the dial and the hands, and it just really is a glaring error. With regards to the performance, it's absolutely negligible. There is no point in using low-grade Luminova like this. On the Mercedes hands, it immediately fades to nothing, and on the applied indices and the loom pip on the ceramic bezel insert, it quickly begins to fade to nothing. This is the poorest loom I have ever seen on a watch, and I've reviewed a lot of watches on my channel, so very disappointing Luminova, and absolutely disappointing to see a mismatch in the colour. Green Luminova on the hands and then blue Luminova on the applied indices and the loom pip. Wholly disappointing. Now, with regards to the movement used, on the AliExpress listing on the ATNO official store, they don't specify which movement is used in this watch. So I sent ATNO official store a message on AliExpress and I asked them which movement is used in the watch. And they simply replied with, it's the Seagull movement. Now, when I got the watch, I removed the case back and I checked to see which movement was used, because I thought that's very impressive to get a Seagull movement in a watch that only costs €30, bearing in mind that Seagull do make some very good automatic movements. And it's not a Seagull movement, it's actually the Dixmont Guangzhou caliber DG2813. So, as the name suggests, the Dixmont Guangzhou movement is made in Guangzhou in China, and the caliber DG2813 has the following specification. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has 22 joules and it has hand winding and hacking, which are useful complications. 40-hour power reserve, which is perfectly acceptable. Now, the negative to the Calibre DG2813 is it has a unidirectional rotor on the movement, so it's not as efficient as a bidirectional rotor. The rotor has to rotate clockwise to wind the movement. When it rotates anti-clockwise, it has a negligible winding effect. So the Calibre DG2813 is a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement, although it is unidirectional rather than being bidirectional, so it's not as efficient. Now, the other negative to a movement running at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz is it has a characteristic judder to the second hand. As you can see, it stutters around the dial rather than sweeping smoothly like a 4 Hz automatic movement running at 28,800 vibrations per hour. So it's got a juddering second hand, but that's a minor criticism. A lot of collectors will be used to that because it's the same beat rate and frequency that Seiko movements such as the NH35A use. They also run at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. So those Seikos also have that same judder to the second hand. Personally, I prefer the smoother sweep of a 4 Hz movement. I like 28,800 vibrations per hour as used in the ETA 2824-2 and the Solita SW200-1, for example. So, with regards to accuracy, there is no stated accuracy to the Dixmont Gangzhou Calibre DG2813. When Dixmont Gangzhou make the Calibre DG2813, they do not regulate the movements in the factory. They send them out unregulated. So what happens is ATNO then case up the Dixmont Gangzhou movement into this Maestro without regulating it. So it is the luck of the draw whether one gets an inaccurate or accurate Calibre DG2813. But however, on a positive note, I'm pleased to report that this one is actually surprisingly accurate. It is running at plus 8 seconds per day consistently when the movement is fully wound to 40 hours of its maximum power reserve. And really, to get a watch that only costs €30 and has an incredible plus 8 second per day accuracy is very impressive, and I like it. I think that the DG2813 is a very reliable, solid workhorse movement, but it's the luck of the draw whether one gets a good one or a bad one from the factory, as they're unregulated, as I've discussed. So lastly, I'll surmise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. The watch should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So the respective price point of this watch is €30. It is excellent value. It is incredible. Really, the specification is loaded for the price point. To get a Hardlex crystal, automatic movement, ceramic bezel insert, solid end links, screw pins in the bracelet rather than push pins, and a glide lock clasp at only €30 is absolutely incredible. One cannot argue that it's not excellent value. This is the best value Submariner Date Homage money can buy for €30. So with regards to the quality, what do I think of it? Well, I certainly can't say it's excellent quality. I would describe the quality overall as being poor. Poor bezel action, as I've shown you. It has half a click of back play, side-to-side lateral play, and it feels very rough. The crown execution is also poor, as I've discussed. It's very hard to pull it out to the final click to set the time. Lots of flaws with regards to the build quality of the rattly bracelet, too much play in it, lots of marks on it, razor sharp edges to the upside down glide lock clasp, and worst of all, an upside down laser engraving on the clasp. And upside down clasp in itself is inexcusable regardless of the price point of the piece. The other main negative that I've shown you with the Loom Test is the mismatch in the colour of the Paul Luminova on the Mercedes hands and the applied indices. Blue and green loom, complete mismatch. So I would say to you, at €30, yes, it is excellent value, but it is poor quality. I think it's better to pay the extra, pay €70 and buy a Pagani design PD1661. It has a better movement than the DG2813. It uses the Seiko NH35A, which is a better movement, and also sapphire crystal, builds quality, finishing, quality control, everything about it is better. It doesn't have a glide lock clasp, but overall I think it's worth the extra money. So yes, this is a good watch for €30, but I think it's a better buy to pay €70 and buy a Pagani design PD1661 as an alternative if you're looking for an homage to the Rolex Submariner Date. So I hope you've liked my review of the Maestro Dive Master 2, which was supposed to be an ATNO 80602G. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.